way to get a man is through his stomach?
Yes.
Yes, the way to...
Well, for me, it would be true.
Yeah, I think for many. And it's interesting to see how even a small thing like that, not having access to the beef or whatever on those menu items, is a way that you might...
What I would say is I'd like to know what the demand elasticity is for that.
Yeah.
American beef, would you pay more? Anyway. All right.
Coming up, CrowdStrike reports after the bell, Microsoft conducting yet another round of layoffs, and Adam Jonas says this is the best name position for data, robotics, and AI. It's all coming up in 3 Stock Lunch.
Parece que todavía no empieza. ¿Por qué será? ¿Por qué será? 7 para la 1. ¿Tiene audio? Sí, tengo audio. Ok. Detener, sí, listo. Ok. Come con scale. A ver. Constellation. 342. Ok. Listo, parece que ya está el directo. A ver. Ok. Listo. Pues bienvenidos al cierre de bolsa. Son 7 para la 1. Tenemos hora y 7 minutos antes de que cierre la bolsa. Estoy investigando empresas de energía nuclear. Con todo este hype que han tenido, este momentum especial por Trump. Y en vez de abaratarse, se pusieron más caras. Ok. Oigan, por cierto, tengo un video baneado de... No sé si es el de ayer. No sé si es el de ayer de apertura o cierre. Pero fue porque la música de la CNBC. Sí. La música de la CNBC. Entonces, básicamente esto de aquí, si yo le doy así, se supone que salió la notificación de que era CNBC, pero era un comercial que a cada rato pasan. Entonces, por eso quedó baneado. Lo puedo editar, claro, pero la intención no es, ¿cómo les digo? No es monetizar un canal de YouTube, simplemente es expandir, es utilizarlo como herramienta para expandir la idea de que todos podemos invertir y mientras más temprano lo hagamos, mejor será para cada uno de nosotros. Ese es el objetivo más que nada. Ya fueron varias ventas, tengo que registrarlas. No, espera ahí, no. No, sí, aquí. Next. Send. Vamos a ponerlo así. Saludos, mi Pompi de Aliens. Sí. Para que... Si yo solo lo quería pegar. Vas a firmar, vamos a poner eso, a ver. CrowdStrike.
Position on now, and then the other half of that position post earnings in case of a big move. But cybersecurity demand over the next decade, I can't think of another business that's going to have more natural demand than this because of the threat to companies. And their AI-powered security platform is going to continue to catch fire. So the outlook is really strong here for this name. We love it.
By the way, I think it's a record high for CrowdStrike today as well, ahead of earnings. Next up, you got Eddie, Microsoft cutting hundreds of jobs just weeks after its largest layoff in years. Shares are little changed today, but it's the best performer in the Mag 7 so far this year. What's the trade for Microsoft?
So we own a 6% position in Microsoft right now in our tactical strategies. It was a contrarian play because, to your point, it was one of the worst performers of the Mag 7 last year. We think it will be one of the best this year. And Azure really had a drag on this stock. And this past quarter, we saw some revenue growth there that exceeded expectations. So they're still continuing to invest in AI, about $80 billion. So we really like Microsoft to be a big winner in 2025.
All right, so bullish. Let's across the board. Does it extend to Tesla? That's our last stock, our mystery chart as well. Shares are up more than 3% today. Adam Jonas calling it one of the best positioned companies in terms of artificial intelligence and robotics and manufacturing. You like this one too?
I do, and I couldn't agree more with those comments. I think one of the best things for us shareholders that happened was Elon leaving Doge and focusing really back to his businesses, and I think they're being rewarded. And the other thing is I think too many people are focused on car sales. This is not a car company. This is an AI play, so you have to look at it a little bit differently instead of focusing on that fundamental breakdown and look at the big picture. I think this name could hit new highs, December highs by the end of summer.
All right, next time, come with something you hate.
Okay, you got a deal.
Eddie, thanks very much. Eddie Gabor.
All right, well, remember, you can recap every 3-stock lunch anytime you want. Just scan that QR code.
Siempre tienen razón con lo que dicen, o sea, de entrada muchos atacan a Tesla, pero pues es que atacan a Tesla por Elon, o sea, cada quien, o sea, tendrá su propio odio, ¿saben? Pero tienen razón cuando dicen que muchos se están enfocando en los números de las ventas, cuando en realidad lo que están haciendo es tecnología e inteligencia artificial. O sea, un coche que se maneje solo requiere mucha inteligencia artificial, muchos datos. Si no es que la mejor inteligencia artificial, y la competencia entre Nvidia, entre Google, entre Apple, Tesla y la China DeepSeek, pues ¿cómo? Estoy checando que todo esté bien. A ver, tenemos liquidez. Este rato se vendió. Pues se vendió el triple QQQ. Lo vieron en el directo anterior. Tengo que registrar eso. Ya, vamos acá a descargas. Descargas. Y en descargas vamos a tomar portfolios. Listo. Entonces, vamos a hacer eso y colocar la liquidez. Mañana. O sea, no ha habido noticias así como de China y Estados Unidos. Siento que yo en lo personal es la mejor noticia que tenemos, aparte del reporte de Broadcom. Broadcom, vamos a checarlo aquí, miren. ABGO. Broadcom es esta, vamos a Profile. Profile. Es una firma de tecnología global que diseña, desarrolla y supply un rango de semiconductores, software de empresa y soluciones de seguridad. La compañía opera a través de dos segmentos: soluciones de semiconductores y software de infraestructura. Las soluciones de los semiconductores que son segmentados incluyen todas sus líneas de producto en propiedad intelectual IP, o sea, todas son licenciadas prácticamente. Y provee una variedad de dispositivos de frecuencia de radio. Ok. O sea, procesadores en frecuencia de radio. Wireless Connectivity. Soluciones de conexión a Internet. Custom Touch Controllers. Pues sí, es muy importante. A lo que voy es que como reporte puede que marque el ritmo chart. Ya. Puede que marque el ritmo. Ahora, lo que llega a pasar a veces, y es no decir como una maldición, algo así, para nada. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 aplicaciones, ok. ¿Qué pedo con esto? Listo. Con eso se trataba, se trababa. Se tenía que actualizar el Excel. Cuando suben las acciones antes de ingresos es porque se van a caer. Un mito total. Hubo un tiempo en el que en mis clases de inversiones en la bolsa se escuchaba mucho eso. Y claro, les hablo del 2019, 2020. Fue prepandemia y durante la pandemia. Pero bueno, ya 6 años de eso. 6 años. Ok, entonces vamos a ver esto. Y ahorita seguimos viendo Broadcom.
Oh, look at that. Just about near session highs as we kind of move the screens around here. Right now, the Dow Industrial is up about 230 points. The S&P up 37. The NASDAQ up 173. The Russell 2000, by the way, small caps, up 1.75%. Kelly and I were just talking during the commercial break about the kind of evolution from FANG to the Magnificent Seven. I wanted to show you the board that we put up here because these names have all hit record intraday highs so far today. Netflix, the N in the old FANG, is one of them.
Are you putting Booking and Darden and Allstate in there?
No, I'm not putting. Those are just the stocks that have hit record highs today.
Fair enough.
Netflix, I thought was interesting, was one of them.
They were going to kick it out a while ago. By the way, they kicked out Tom Thibodeau. Did you see?
I saw that.
Come on, he did great.
All right.
Anyway,
thanks for watching Power Lunch, all.
Closing bell starts right now.
All right, welcome to Closing Bell. I'm Scott Wapner, live from Post 9 here at the New York Stock Exchange. This make or break hour begins with stocks on the move, new records within reach. Coming up, we will ask FundStrat's Tom Lee what the summer might hold for your money. In the meantime, the scorecard with 60 to go and regulation looks like that. We did start to ramp a little bit midday, and we've been pretty solid throughout. NASDAQ leading. I mean, the Russell's had a great day, but the NASDAQ's up near 1%. You see the Dow and the S&P. And the S&P, by the way, is only about 3% away from a new all-time high. NVIDIA is once again the most valuable company by market cap. The chip trade just
3.45 trillones de dólares NVIDIA.
More on that in just a moment.
Locura.
We'll also tell you how high the bar is tonight for CrowdStrike. It reports an OT. That stock among many hitting a new 52-week high today. Netflix as well, which got yet another positive call today. One firm taking that target to $1,400 a share. That takes us to our talk of the tape. Will it be a summer sizzle for stocks? We all want to know that. Let's ask Dan Greenhouse, Solus Alternative Asset Management's chief strategist, with me here at Post 9. You say we can actually get a little more comfortable with how we're thinking about the market. We're 3% away, as I said, on the S&P.
Yeah, on the technical side of things, which I know Joe spent some time on the halftime report, I like the consolidation above the 200-day moving average. The longer that you hold above that level, the better. And the environment, obviously, we've discussed earnings. The economic data has been fine. And so altogether, I think you can certainly be comfortable. I would take issue with some of the enthusiasm in terms of, well, we're going to continue on to new highs and the momentum is in your... I understand why one would feel that way, and certainly I would lean more in that direction than the opposite. But at the same time, and you touched on it again on halftime, in the next 2 months or so, whatever effects from tariffs are to be seen will be seen.
And you think that they still will be seen? Because you've been more positive than most.
Sure, but I was positive in the sense that we were selling off 20% down at the lows, and I didn't think that was warranted. And now my argument was we should be back around where we were, which is where we are. So I think my issue now is, how does the market react in a month or two when the data starts to show either in the form of drifting up 0.3, 0.4% CPI or PCE prints, or companies talking about raising prices or absorbing it via margins? How does the market react to those headlines? Because right now there's a sense, oh, everything's good, there's been no problem, we've done all these tariffs and there have been no issues. And I think those effects were always likely to be, and still likely to be, sometime in the middle end of the summer.
There were issues with the bond market, and some suggest that they're going to roar again, and maybe louder than the first time. You're smiling as if you don't agree with the people who are suggesting that.
Well, I think you were talking about this earlier today through the prism of deficits, and you were saying that you talked to a lot of people around the street, and everyone's focused on the deficit and the amount of spending that's going to come.
Well, it's the debate about why rates are moving higher, whether it's related to the deficit or if it's because of stronger than expected economic growth. It's likely a combination of the two, but the issue around the deficit seems to be getting the loudest play right now.
Listen, it's perfectly fair and reasonable and largely accurate to say it's a little bit of column A, a little of column B. I think the one thing I wanted to interject into that conversation is you're in the process of transitioning ownership of the Treasury market away from long-term stable owners to more, to oversimplify it, price-sensitive investors, which means probably term premiums going to go up, or the amount of compensation that I'm going to demand will rise, and that's going to put upward pressure on treasuries. And I think there's a component in there, and it is an ancillary effect of the other issues that we're talking about. But I think that transition, which is going to go on for many, many years, away from, again, price-insensitive buyers and towards more price-sensitive buyers, is probably going to affect the treasury market as well. But to echo the point that was made, right now, I don't think yields are going up predominantly because of increased supply. Because again, if money was coming out of the Treasury market per se, you'd see it going into some other comp across the world, the bund market or the OAT market or JGB, you don't see that. And so I think right now it's really just a story of increased compensation demanded.
I mean, there is definitely concern about the deficit seemingly from Elon Musk.
Yep.
Now, I wonder if you saw the post on X, his X platform earlier, because for a moment the market did take a little bit of a hit. Eamon Javers is at the White House with more, because this is a really interesting development, the timing of which and the bigger picture of such. But tell me more about what we saw here.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to go with this, Scott. I can tell you that I talked to one White House official who said, look, it's not ideal to have the world's richest man and a political ally of the president out there tweeting this. Here's what Elon Musk said on X, his own social media platform. During Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary's briefing, he posted, "I'm sorry, but I just can't take it anymore, stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." He goes on to say it will massively increase the already gigantic budget deficit to $2.5 trillion and burden American citizens with crushingly unsustainable debt. I can tell you, Scott, this has been setting off political shockwaves on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue as lawmakers up on Capitol Hill are reacting to it as well. And it seems to be entrenching those Republicans who were inclined to not support the president's bill here. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, was asked about the social media post. Even as she was briefing, this popped up on Elon Musk's feed, and here's what she said.
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
Okay.
So they're trying to shrug it off here at the White House,
Beautiful
Scott,
bill.
but clearly Elon Musk has political aspirations and political impact potentially long beyond this administration. So the question here is, lawmakers on Capitol Hill, how many of them will be sort of magnetically attracted to Donald Trump, and how many of them will be more magnetically attracted to Elon Musk? That's an open question as of right now. The impact of these tweets, we just don't know on the big, beautiful bill, as the White House calls it.
We take this, though, I would think, as undoubtedly a shot of sorts at the White House.
Absolutely.
From Elon Musk.
Yeah, not of
Because,
sorts,
you know,
just a shot.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I mean, the CBO obviously agrees and says it will add to the deficit. The OMB, and Russell Vought has been on television in the last handful of days arguing on the Caroline Leavitt and White House side of things. But as you say, this is a shot, and maybe the biggest one yet, from Elon Musk, certainly at the White House about any level of policy.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the timing of it, Scott, coming, while Caroline Leavitt was briefing, so she had to react to it live, coming just about a week after Elon Musk left the White House. He was at the president's side. The president brought him into the Oval Office to praise him and send him off in glory from his Doge mission, which the White House says he accomplished here in terms of cutting spending. I mean, this is one of the president's closest political allies who spent the night many times in the Trump residence during this second term. Somebody who's been at the president's side in Mar-a-Lago and elsewhere again and again and again, now coming out against the president.
Venta de tequila ahorita.
It's devastating politically. I can imagine there's going to be a personal response. We're in the middle of an unusual 48-hour period here at the White House where we haven't seen the president with any public events yesterday or today. He's been active on social media. We haven't seen him on camera, so we haven't had an opportunity to ask him about a lot of these things. You can imagine there will be some reaction coming from President Trump here as well as they formulate how to respond to this and how to persuade Republicans on Capitol Hill to stick with him.
You don't obviously cover the Musk side of this as closely as some others do. It's more of the political angling. However, you do have to wonder, Eamon, and I'm sure you are, as to whether this is the beginning and maybe the very earliest stages of a Musk image rehabilitation tour, and whether it's going to be in any way successful if he thinks that taking the opposite position of the White House in such a public way is going to help him fix some of the brand damage he's done to his companies.
Bueno, básicamente están hablando de lo de siempre. Elon y que no le presta atención a las empresas y que cómo es que va a ser posible que deje al presidente, que por Dodge, que es asesor, lo de siempre. Pero con esa cierto ataque o cierta duda dejan.
As head of Doge, and I think you saw that rehabilitation tour begin a little bit in his sit-down with R. David Faber on CNBC, where Musk was now back at a factory, being interviewed in front of Teslas, not in the Oval Office with his "Make America Great Again" hat or waving his chainsaw in the air, resetting himself as the sort of visionary of technology and future transportation, whether that's in space or on the ground, and reintroducing that persona back to the American public, which had seen him as sort of nothing but a Trump acolyte over the past 6 months, now trying to reground that image around Tesla and around SpaceX. And I think, that effort continues. But there's more going on here, because we saw this pullback of Jared Isaacman as the president's pick to head NASA. That was seen as somebody very, very close to Elon Musk. That got yanked suddenly over the past couple of days. So there's more of a split here between Elon and the president than just Elon wanting to get back to Tesla and get back to business.
Yeah, these are really interesting developments. I'm sure you'll be watching Truth Social for anything that might come from the president here forward. Eamon, thanks so much for that. That's Eamon Javers on the North Lawn. I'll go back to Dan Greenhouse here, only in the context of if this in any way jeopardizes the future of what they consider to be this big, beautiful bill, and investors consider it a conduit to higher stock prices down the road. We have a problem with that?
Well, listen, the margin in the House and the Senate is very thin right now, and I think to the extent Elon has any political clout whatsoever, obviously coming out so publicly in the Chip Roy camp, if you will, is not great in terms of the passage of the bill. But I also think the Senate in particular, which is now taking up the House bill and going to make some changes to it, deals with different political issues than Elon's making it out to be. But I will say, Elon is not the first to voice the idea that what is the point of electing Republicans running on fiscal responsibility, et cetera, if you can't cut any spending. Now, mind you, for the public out there, a lot of the spending that people are talking about cannot be done in this bill. It must be done in a separate bill. But that's not to say that you can't cut any spending in this bill. And there is a camp that thinks that you haven't done enough. Elon is giving rise to that.
His voice may be the most important one at this point.
Certainly.
Just given the money that he has. Now, he's also said that he's sort of done contributing to politics. So you take all of these things in stages, but I'll just go back to the original question. I'm not sure you addressed it directly. If there's an issue with the passing of this bill, is it a problem for the stock market?
Yes, but I don't think this means there's an issue for passing the bill. I think it certainly puts some pressure on some lawmakers. I mean, you've already got Thomas Massie, Chip Roy, Ron Johnson. That camp already thinks there's too much pork, if you will, to oversimplify it here. But yes, to answer your question directly, since you did not let me get away with it the first time, yes, if you don't pass this bill, taxes go up. That's a problem.
All right. A lot of things are going up today, including, I mentioned at the very top of the program, NVIDIA's going up. The chips have been going up a lot lately. Christina Partsenevelos has been watching that for us. It's really been a resurgence for these names.
Yeah, and a lot of it had to really, it started again with NVIDIA's latest earnings report, reviving the AI theme. Today, it's overtaken Microsoft to become the world's most valuable company. There was a note this morning from Jefferies saying NVIDIA is still a top pick, and they're actually calling for margins that could climb to almost 80% this year. That's incredible, 80% for a tech company. And so that's why you're seeing shares almost 3% higher. I want to move on to AMD because there was some news coming this afternoon. The CFO spoke of the Bank of America Tech Conference. The stock is up almost 2% going forward into next year and beyond. They're confident, this according to the CFO, about continued gross margin expansion as well, despite the, quote, awful data center GPU side, which is slightly dilutive or dilutive to gross margin. So that's a quote from them. I want to move on to OnSemi too, because that stock is up about 8% right now. No, even almost 10%. This too coming from managers speaking at the Bank of America conference. They're reiterating their prior guidance for Q2, indicating signs of recovery recovery, not only in analog, but they're seeing strength in their AI business. So really this turnaround in the cyclical parts of the business, which is helping all of chips as a whole. And then speaking of all of chips, another big name, which is the custom chip maker, Broadcom, actually hit an all-time high earlier today. You can see it trading almost 3% higher. So really a lot of movement.
Están hablando de cómo se está moviendo la demanda de los chips y que SOC, bueno, tanto este que de aquí, el SMH, es un ETF, pero el SOX considero mejor ese SMH. Y es más caro inclusive. Pero vean esto, es más caro y se ha movido 5 o 3 dólares. Este es más barato y se ha movido 5.19. Es decir, estás obteniendo más dinero por un menor costo de oportunidad, sería. Sino que a lo que voy es que puedes comprar más de estos porque te estás ahorrando los 30 dólares que salen, que sobran, y puedes comprar más de SOX. Y encima de eso se mueve más que el SMH. Entonces está bastante bien. SOX. Un amigo hizo mucho dinero con este. 148. Como 60, 70 dólares, ¿eh? Mejor, a mi parecer, mejor Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Netflix. Netflix es la Netflix. Pero bueno, estamos hablando de Elon, energía, y que el Nasdaq de nuevo lidera las ganancias, fortalezas en tecnología.
The point I keep making as a non-exclusive tech investor is show me the evidence that something's slowing down. You had DeepSeek, which was a worry for like a minute and a half. That's done nothing. The idea was we're going to need less power. That hasn't happened. CapEx expenditures are still as high as they've ever been.
Meta Constellation deal today showing, the power play angle here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a multi-year story for nuclear and for AI demand. And again, if you think that you don't need as much power, you're not striking a deal to restart 3 Mile Island, let alone the Constellation deal today.
I know, but if you said that you think that we could be more comfortable, I think was the word you used, because, well, in part technically, if you think we're going to new highs and then potentially beyond, is tech the thing going to carry you there? Are we going to get another big, broad move in the market to represent that?
Well, tech's probably going to carry you there just mathematically. They're so big. And of course, as everybody knows, their earnings growth dwarfs the rest of the market, et cetera, et cetera. But let's not pretend that it's only tech. I mean, you've got industrials like RTX, both GEs are basically at highs. Visa and MasterCard basically at highs. The insurance companies basically at highs. I mean, there's a long list of companies that are not tech that are doing phenomenally well in this market. And again, the market's up, the S&P 500 is up, call it 1% for the year. Roughly 50% of stocks are up more than that. Roughly 50% of stocks are I guess, down. That's what you would expect to see in a normal market. So I don't know,
but this has been such an unexpectedly abnormal year thus far.
That's fair, but
for how we came in. If I told you if I showed you the year-to-date chart, and I was going to say, well, here's what happened here, and then here's what happened there, and so forth and so on, and you said, well, I probably didn't see that coming.
Yeah, no, I don't think many people saw it coming, but my point is just where we are. You've got a good number of stocks trading above the 200-day moving average, called 50%, 75% trading above the 50-day moving average. I mean, there's something going. My only point, again, I'm not arguing with what you're saying. My point is just there are things going on in the market. Look at Booking. That are not technology related.
No, I get it. I mean, things like that. Look, like CrowdStrike, for example, and some of the cyber names have been working. They don't have to be mega cap related.
ServiceNow, CyberArk.
But Malcolm, CrowdStrike reports in overtime tonight. I mean, we're showing the chart here. 2 months, 41%. I said at the very top of the program, I could pull 20 names out of my hat that are well known, that are seemingly hitting 52-week highs again today. This is one of them, but that increases the pressure going into the number.
Bien.
Yeah, I think it does increase the pressure on the company, but I also feel pretty confident in their ability to actually impress investors listening to the call. I would not be looking to sell shares here ahead of the print. I think that realistically, this is their first time reporting since last year's outage and the hangover of the CCP plan to make it up to their core customers who are impacted by that outage. So I think that everything is setting up for them to really wow the street, especially as far as the target toward their $10 billion of ARR that they're targeting, that they've been talking about. This will really be their first opportunity since then to focus the conversation solely there. And I think investors will be glad that they stayed.
Steve Kovac, what do you think we need to focus on the most as we look ahead to this?
Yeah, I mean, you guys really said there's just so much positivity in CrowdStrike, up about 42% year to date, most of that in the last 2 months, 10% over the last month alone. Look, big comeback since that outage last summer. And as for expectations of this report, Scott, what to look for? Strong revenue growth expectations are up 20% for revenue, though slowing down a little bit compared to the year-ago quarter. The next important metric is that annual recurring revenue that Malcolm was just talking about. We're expecting that to be up 21%. And a potential surprise item the folks at Street Account were talking about to watch in this report, drops in federal government contracts from DOGE cuts and demand amid all the economic uncertainty from tariffs. Some potential headwinds there for them, Scott.
Yeah, which, I mean, the Street has been concerned about that, Malcolm, in the past. Steve Kovac, thank you very much for that. Right? I mean, these have been issues that have been mentioned in the past, a slowdown in government spend.
Yeah, but I think in CrowdStrike's case, the thing that investors really will care about is the fact that they don't have those support payments to those core customers to make it up to them hanging over them anymore, which was really a drag on margins the last couple of quarters that they reported. So they're telling us something like a 97% gross customer retention rate, which has to make its way into this earnings print. And I think we should also consider the fact that they've even decided to jettison the 5 core modules or more metric from their land and expand plan that they were reporting on, because the average new customer is showing up requesting 5 or more modules as they sign contracts, which has to speak well about the growth of their customers going forward. So existing customer base, maybe not as strong as it was a couple of years ago, but new customer base, new signups, I think is a really good testament to how that growth is really showing up. Plus, you throw in the fact that they are talking about improvements to margins from AI, and they're feeling so confident that they just executed a 5% reduction in force because AI is able to do so much more. I think all of those things taken together start to spell a really great growth story for the name. So I understand the analysts who have shown that they're starting to get a little bit hesitant because the valuation is showing itself so stretched. But I also think there's tremendous opportunity for the company to grow into that valuation going forward.
How do you look at stocks like this? Momentum, by the way, is another area of the market that's been hitting a new high. MTUM did today.
That's right. Listen, I'll leave the specifics of CrowdStrike to Malcolm. I'll just pivot off a point on the federal contracts. Throw up a chart of Booz Allen Hamilton, which is BAH, Boy Abel Henry. There is probably no greater illustration of what's happened here with respect to DOGE and government contracts than Booz Allen. This is something every company and every analyst has to be aware of, because whether we have seen thus far, and we have not, the DOGE cuts or the DOGE attitude, if you will, be codified into law, that's probably, I mentioned earlier, you can't do a lot of this in the reconciliation bill, but you can do it on the back end. And I think somewhere in the next couple of months, whenever they do get this bill passed in whatever form in which it is passed, these types of cuts are going to get formalized into law, certainly to a greater degree than is currently the case.
You have a thought on the Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau?
I have many thoughts on the Knicks firing Tom Thibodeau. I know you do as well. But listen, I think...
I knew you didn't expect that one. We don't need your opinion.
Tough end to the year.
I was just curious. Malcolm, we'll spare the audience. We'll talk to you soon. Malcolm Etheridge, Dan Greenhouse, Tom Thibodeau.
Un amigo ahorita me preguntó, me dijo, oye, es que no entendí bien lo de Industry y quedó peor con entender lo de la bolsa. Entonces yo le dije, oye, es que Industry hace muchas divisas, derivados. Es un negocio que tienen los bancos y muchos fondos de inversión y brokers, aunque no son lo mejor para el público que está empezando en bolsa. Entonces lo dejó peor. Y yo le dije, pues güey, pues ponte a ver Billions. Y justo ahorita estoy pensando, porque luego hay personas que están, no sé cómo sea, porque tengo dudas ya debido al baneo del video, solo por una imagen, así como ese comercial que está pasando justo ahorita, por eso. Y se vale también, ¿no? Son derechos de autor. Entonces, no sé cómo sea con lo de Billions o Succession por la música. Por la música de los artistas, porque hicieron hincapié en la música. Dijeron, si lo vieras, o sea, lo puedes mutear y no hay tema, lo puedes editar y mutear y pues adelante. Y así, ¿no? O sea, mientras no escuche la música, porque pues son quienes, los productores de la música, quienes tienen esta protección. Entonces así, para ver si el fin de semana una transmisión de Billions o de... Sería Billions, Succession, The Big Short, sería Gaming Wall Street y sería Dumb Money. Y son 5. Todavía hay Industry, pero no sé, no creo. O al final, sí, ¿por qué no? Pero al final. En fin, ahorita ya estoy cerrando. Tengo liquidez en 2 carteras, mañana será usada. Tengo que checar una de este lado. Ujú. Vamos a ver. Y justo es en los comerciales, o sea, luego, por ejemplo, yo podría dejar los comerciales, pero si pasa uno con la música protegida por derecho de autor, ya valió. Entonces, lo que justo era lo que no quería, porque entonces tendría que dejarlo así en silencio y pues sería como aburrido. A menos que... Y al rato nos banean por esa música, ¿no? Falta media hora para que cierre la bolsa. A ver, en un rato va a reportar CrowdStrike y mañana temprano Dollar Tree. Dollar Tree va a reportar mañana la apertura.
In the second quarter of 2024. For the first time as a public company, it turned a profit.
Is this a new era for DraftKings?
There's an inflection from when you're cash flow negative and you're operating off of equity raises from the past to when you're self-funded and you're cash.
Pero bueno, sigamos con esto. Y ahorita que ya que empiece la programación pongo el volumen. Bien, esta cartera. Ahí tengo que registrar las ventas, me lleva. Todavía diría, pues le bajo el volumen y lo dejo bajito, pero no. Vamos a checar porque en la mayoría, como les dije, en portafolios pequeños está Nasdaq para Estados Unidos y Jin para China. Entonces entre ellos hacen como una, no sé si decir correlación, porque en finanzas no sé si tengan la correlación, creo que no. Miren, ya empezó a ver.
There is. Ryan Dietrich, Chief Market Strategist with the Carson Group, joins us now. I know you're trying to be clever, the Rocky Balboa market. What's that? You can knock them down, you can't keep them down, can't keep the market down. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's right, Scott. Good afternoon, and thanks for having me back. So, I was taking a look this year so far. When we have a down day on the S&P 500, what happens the next day? So you get knocked down, what happens? Scott, I know the number doesn't sound all that impressive, 0.22%. Okay, that's the average return the next day after a down day. That is one of the strongest we've ever seen. You're talking 2003, 2009, and 2020 were other years when you have a down day, what happens the next day? That's just, I think, a neat little stat that really shows, what we kind of know. This market does not want to go down. I've been coming on for a while saying, listen, this lows were in. We were saying that back in April. It sounded crazy then. Now it's looking more like it. But I think it's really important to know this market doesn't want to go down, kind of like Rocky.
That's the Yo Adrian effect.
There you go.
I guess what you're showing us. Are we going to new highs and sooner than people might have thought?
Yeah, we think so. I mean, honest to goodness, is not that far away as we sit here and talk right now. But the reality, again, is look around the globe. I know you've had a lot of guests talk about these things. Just about most countries are hitting 52-week highs or all-time highs, like as we're talking right now. U.S. is probably going to play catch-up. One other thing that's really important, those advanced decline lines, right? How many stocks are going up versus down? This is a broad-based participation. We have those new highs and advanced decline lines recently. That to us, again, suggests, June, they called it the June swoon. When you have a strong May, like we just did, obviously, June tends to do pretty well. In fact, the summer months, which are normally pretty strong, actually, these next 3 months are usually pretty good. They get even better when you have a big May. So we think new highs are coming probably this summer here.
I'm looking at all of the notes that you gave to the producer of this segment, and I don't see a single risk in here.
Están hablando de qué tan riesgoso es el contexto actual y si los índices tienen momentum para seguir creciendo más de lo que ya han crecido.
Leads after me, so the fact you have Tom and I back to back, that could be a risk by itself. They're getting a little too bullish, but there's always
no. You know what? I know you joke about that. I know you joke about that. but some are literally going to think that. It's like, well, Dietrich's got no risks. Tom Lee's always bullish. I need to fade that because this is just ridiculous because I got a trade war. Now I've got Musk hating on the big, beautiful alleged bill, and maybe it's not a foregone conclusion. I don't know, but I don't see any risks being talked about by many.
No, you're right. And well, listen, so we can talk.
Sí, la CNBC no sé qué trae con Trump, pero ya será desde lo del viernes. Pero
we've got a lot of international exposure, right? We've got a lot of European exposure, probably more than just about any other RA out there. We've had a little bit of gold. We are underweight bonds, yes, but I know I like momentum. You talked about momentum for a minute there in the segment before me. We like momentum, but on the other side, we got a barbell approach. You got momentum, but we also have low vol. We did that pair trade after the election way back in November. So are we overweight equities? Yes, we've been there all year. Not as overweight as I was a year ago when I was come on with you, though. But again, there's always some risks. But I think that, again, to make it cliche, the biggest risk could be this bull market keeps going and investors get lost and unfortunately miss it. Is kind of I think the biggest risk there.
I know we both know there are always risks.
30 minutos para el cierre.
The risks are known because they're legit. Are they not? I mean, we still have tariffs. We may get down to a position where we have 10% tariffs across the board. Those still matter. The economy is slowing. I don't think there's any debating that. The degree to which I think is legitimately at issue.
Yeah.
But what about that? I mean, rates are still reasonably high. The bond market threw a tantrum once already. None of that matters.
No, it matters. You know, the one that gets us, I wouldn't say keeps us up at night, but thinking about the market's pricing in still 2 rate cuts this year. You know, I work with a very smart guy named Sonu Varghese, looks at all this data. Sonu's saying, you know, they might not cut this year. And again, could that kind of upset the apple cart? Could that, you know, potentially, you know, really kind of bring back stocks and potentially bonds as well? I mean, there's, you know, tell me there's a chance. There's a chance there. So that's something that we are actively watching. But at the same time, I mean, S&P's flat on the year. You know, I know what we just did, a major slingshot. So after a gain of 70% the previous 2 years, back-to-back 20%ers, was it really shocking to us to have a weak first quarter? We say no. We did not see a bear market. No, we didn't see a bear market this year. But we said down 12 to 15%. Made a lot of sense at some point. Obviously, isn't it crazy? Two months ago this second was Liberation Day and all that craziness. But nonetheless, we've come back, and we still think it will be a little bit overweight equities here with the global diversified portfolio, Scott.
All right, it's good to get your perspective, and I appreciate your time. Ryan, thanks. We'll see you soon. Ryan Dietrich.
Appreciate it.
Up next, the aforementioned Tom Lee, a fund strat. He'll tell us why he's forecasting a melt-up rally, and he'll tell us the parts of the market he's betting on next.
How did you all live like this?
Vamos a quitarlos porque si no, baneado. Iba a mandar un mensaje para que vendan unas acciones, pero a ver, esperen. Bien. Ok, 5, 6, 7, va. No está tan mal. Ok. Ah, sí es cierto. Sí es cierto. Ok, tenemos una empresa que investigar, a ver. Luego sí pasa que... ok. Pasa así clientes como que quieren comprar ciertas cosas. Entonces, compran las acciones, es decir, a mí me dicen, oye, me interesa esta acción por esto y esto y esto. O sea, hagan de cuenta, ellos hicieron su chamba e investigaron. Entonces digo, bueno, ya las buenas y malas yo se las doy como de, ok, puede pasar esto, puede pasar aquello. Y eso está chido porque es como ese interés que llega a tener la gente, que ese es el objetivo, inculcar este hábito de inversión, porque las famosísimas afores no van a dar para todos y desde ahora lo estamos viendo, entonces son una bomba de tiempo. Entonces, ¿qué tenemos que hacer? Generar capital con nuestro capital. ¿Y cómo hacemos eso? O compramos y vendemos cosas, que es un segundo trabajo, o haces un puesto de carnitas, que es un segundo trabajo, o delegas la responsabilidad a diferentes metodologías que dan mayores rendimientos. Entonces, es eso. Vamos a ver, actual. A ver, vamos a ver. Ok, va. Eso ahí se queda. Vamos a hacer esto por acá. Ok, interesante. Va. Estoy viendo unas acciones. ASPN. A ver.
Next guest is calling for in the months ahead. He is Tom Lee. He is FundStrat's co-founder and the head of research, also a CNBC contributor. And as you see, he's here at Post 9. Nice to have you.
Great to see you,
Just saw Dietrich on. He's bullish. And you are too, but you say too many people are not.
Yeah, I would. You'd think that with the S&P doing well this week and a great May, investors are bullish. They are not. You know, in our calls and Zooms with portfolio managers, many are still cautious because they see tariff risks ahead and they don't have tariff resolution in hand and they can't get bullish. I think the feedback we get from a lot of folks is they think stocks shouldn't be rising. So I would say, given the amount of cash on the sidelines, the fact that short interest is going up, and we have a quiet week and markets are rallying, I think the risk is now of a substantial leg up rally from here.
What role do tariffs play in all of the way you're thinking about the market?
Well, tariffs matter. Remember, before February, before Trump sort of talked about this, the base case for many was a 15% tariff. Let's say that we're going to end up at a 10%. That's 10% on 15%, which is imports, which is about a 1% GDP effect. That's not that different than oil going from 40 to 80, and we wouldn't say $80 oil breaks the economy anymore. So I think tariffs aren't, we have to adjust to it, but it's not the thing that takes us to 4,000 S&P anymore.
Now, what if there's a renewed and more protracted, if not dug-in fight over the tax bill? What if Musk's post on social media earlier is enough to get some lawmakers in a very thin margin Washington to rethink their positions based on his political donations or lack of support in the future? Is that a real concern in any way?
Well, this is what's going to be set up as what I'd call event risk. And it's an event risk similar to a government shutdown or an auto plant shutdown, something that affects the economy for a specific period of time. But again, those have not been things to turn structurally bearish. They may be tactical risks, but again, they've always been buy the dip opportunities.
So if, for argument's sake, the tax bill ends up not as big as the price tag is on it now, would that be a positive taken by the market? Maybe the bond market would feel pretty good about that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, it's kind of hard to say because I could see it being if bonds rally, that's good for equities. But if this tax bill leads to more spending, even if yields rise, markets are going to focus on the earnings effect. So I'm just going to say it could go either way. I mean, it could be bad or it could be good.
When you hear Jamie Dimon talk about there will be cracks in the bond market, do you just brush that off? Is that, I would expect someone in Jamie's position to be talking about the risks that are in the system? Or do you sit back and say, well, maybe that first little scream from the bond market was before there's a full-on tantrum, which wouldn't be good for equities in any way?
Well, JP Morgan has a dashboard to the U.S. economy because they see consumer credit They see it real time. We know consumer credit delinquencies are rising and auto loan delinquencies are rising. But is that going to spill over into the broader credit market to create a credit event? The one market we watch is high yield. High yield spreads have actually managed to hold on to most of the rally gains, and they've retraced 70% of the widening. That's a market that says the economy actually is starting to strengthen.
So you don't put that much cred into bigger worries about the bond market having an issue anytime soon. And even for accuracy's sake, I mean, it's not like he said we're going to have this issue tomorrow. I don't know if it's 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. I'm paraphrasing, but that's generally what he said.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jamie's flagging that there are parts of the economy that are weak, including housing. I mean, housing is deteriorating very quickly, but that's also going to deliver a pretty big deflationary pulse. That was 75% of the rise in inflation since 2019 is housing and auto services. So if housing is turning down on price because there's supply, I would argue that's a structural decline in inflation. The Fed would actually have to be quite dovish in the next 12 months. That's bullish.
How many times does the Fed hike between now and the end of the year?
Well, I think you mean cut.
I mean, cut. Sorry.
Okay.
I hope that wasn't a Freudian slip. Cut.
Yes. They may not do any cuts between now and the end of the year. But
that'd be fine?
Yeah, I think the stock market, now that we're in June, is starting to look at 2026. And I think the Fed's going to be, they're in a position to do cuts next year. That's what's going to be bullish for equity.
Lastly, still ride this tech run?
Yes, I think the Mag 7 were the first to peak, the first to bottom. They were the washed out stocks that didn't make new lows in April. So we like the Mag 7, but we also like this financials, industrials, and small caps for the second half.
Tom, why do you keep doing this to yourself? Last year, you said you like small caps for the second half. You said they were going to go up 50% in the second half, or something like that, didn't you?
Yeah.
But why do you keep doing this to yourself?
Well, the small caps have gotten hurt because the Fed has been on hold. It's been a hawkish pause, but I don't think the Fed's next move is to start raising rates. So, yeah, I know it's been not a great call, but I think small caps are still a second half story.
All right. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.
We'll keep checking back with Tom Lee. Up next, we track the biggest movers into this.
Second half. O sea, tienen todavía chance para seguir creciendo. O sea, va a ser una locura. Las small caps. Cuando hablan de las small caps, son el Russell 2000, es decir, todas las empresas que están en este índice de aquí, que hoy ha crecido 1.58%. Puede que este sea el inicio de un rally para Russell, porque luego pasa, pero son este tipo de inversiones que no ves, porque estás viendo todo lo demás, y se te pasa luego comprarlo barato, ¿no? Porque, por ejemplo, si lo hubiéramos comprado ayer, hubiera estado en $29, ahorita ya es 29. 30.86 no es mucho, de hecho, pero vean esto. O sea, venimos del día de la liberación con Trump, $18. $36 sería el doble, el 50% el 100% de tu inversión aquí. 9, aquí ya pasó un mes. Sería fácil 3 meses esperar. O sea, véanlo de esta manera. Habrá un loco por ahí que, bueno, ni un loco, simplemente alguien cuerdo en realidad, que compra en 18, $19 y se espera que le dé el doble de inversión, es decir, que llega a 36, $38. Para que esto pase, o sea, personalmente, si las variables económicas siguen como van, y los tratos y las negociaciones con ciertos aspectos pequeños que golpean a la economía, como por ejemplo la tasa de interés, la inflación, que no hay acuerdo con Pakistán, o sea, cualquier cosa, disminuyen el momentum, el hype o el sentimiento de mercado al alza. Entonces, si eso continúa como vamos, es decir, con más buenas noticias que malas, puede que este alcance 36, 38 a finales de este mes y se cumplirá esta tesis de inversión. Vamos a ver. Tengo que revisar también las posiciones porque tengo Down y TNA en un portafolio a largo plazo. Entonces iremos viendo. Ahí se están gestionando. 33, 36, 38. No lo sé, Rick. Ujú, claro. Ok. Acá estamos con esto. Bien. Tesla. ¿Debería poner música? Nada. ¿O sí? Es que ¿cómo se escucharía? A ver. A ver, espera. No. Tal vez sería por fuera, ¿no? Si acaso. Listo, a ver. No manches. Ok, va. Genial. Va, 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 va. Listo. Ajajajaja. Yo creo que voy a hacer el experimento el sábado o domingo, ya veré, para Succession. Chale. Bien, es que ya van a ser las 2, me lleva. Tengo que salir otra vez rápido, pero solo hoy. Mañana definitivamente no, mañana sí yo creo que va a ser el proyecto de Kramer para ver Mad Money, el programa. Am, jueves hay cita y viernes hay cita, entonces, bueno, hay reunión. Ah, ok, hay mucho que hacer. Ok, entonces, quedan 11 minutos para el cierre de bolsa. ¿Ya están registradas estas? Tengo que checar. A ver, también. Ah, sí, tengo que mover este para acá. Esto acá. Esto ahí está bien. Y, miren, les voy a mostrar esto. De hecho, desde la mañana se les quería mostrar. Ganadores y perdedores. Vamos a actualizarla. Cuando estudiaba en la escuela Pip Craig, que me dio todos los conocimientos, mencionaron en clase una cosa que se llamaba ganadores y perdedores. Yo la empecé a ver. Eso me llevó a esto después, a literal ganadores y decliners, perdedores. Entonces Dollar Tree lidera, On Semiconductor lidera, todos estos obviamente lideran, pero los tres primeros son los mejores. Miren, First Solar, después de toda la caída que tuvo, a ver, FSR, ah, L, no, entonces vamos a ponerle First Solar. 149, 9, 10 dólares. Ok. Pero a ver, su mínimo. Bueno, el día de Trump, 118, pero su último mínimo había sido este de 149. Y su máxima fue de 198. O sea, desde lo de Trump, ajá, 110. 6, sí, aquí fue abril, día de la liberación, 116.93. Pues nada mal, la verdad es que con cualquier inversión que veamos, o sea, vean de aquí a acá, de aquí a acá, de aquí a acá, o sea, con la inversión que seamos, ese es el riesgo sistémico o la coyuntura que enfrentamos hace mes y medio, o un mes. No, sí, mes y medio, fue en abril. Wow. Hoy es martes. Qué loco. Martes 3 de mayo, de junio que digo. Recibo. Y 1000. Tengo que llevarme esto. 1821, 1821. Estoy buscando. Pierdo, ¿dónde está? Tendré que buscarlo. 1822, ya lo encontré. 1822, va. 1822, ajá, ajá. 22. Listo. Ahora este. Bueno, ahorita lo mando. O lo mando de una vez, a ver. Es el de mayo 2025. Martes 3 de junio. Bien. Genial. Ahora vamos a mandarlo a impresión. Ahí. Listo. Ahora. Sí, cierto. Tenemos que ver esta onda. Listo, también ya quedó eso. A ver, hay que matar varios cabos sueltos. A ver. Hay que atar que diga.
Accelerants. It came from two areas that historically the market's been a little bit twitchy about, which would be AI sustainability, conference stuff all over the place. Taiwan Semi, a lot of smaller names just reasserting their optimism about that. The stocks are absolutely flying because of it. And then consumer, whether it's Dollar General or just the other companies that seem to say we're in decent shape and nothing has changed there. The JOLTS number was fine. So it's kind of a no news is good news when it comes to, deviations in the macro data. That said, we did try to, make a run at 6,000, didn't quite get there. It feels like, I don't know if you want to see CoreWeave going up 24% today. I don't know if you want that thing going absolutely loose to the upside, if you feel as if it's, the silly stuff is starting to come back into play, but maybe that's not today's business.
All right, Core, what about the dollar stores? Mike just mentioned what's happening with one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Dollar General, as Mike suggested, putting up a much stronger than expected earnings report and better sales, too, for its first quarter. Traffic was down, to be fair, but it's improving. And the comparable sales also coming in stronger than expected. Now, the discount retailer did increase the low end of its previous guidance for earnings, revenue, and comps, but it's also been really careful with its wording to note that it's largely reflecting the stronger quarter that it just reported, this guidance upgrade. And it notes it is still accounting for a lot of uncertainty around tariffs and the impact on consumer behavior. And while Dollar General says it hopes to mitigate, quote, a significant portion of the impact of costs of tariffs, it's concerned that its consumer will be pressured from price increases elsewhere in their purchasing decisions. Now, analysts do have some higher expectations for Dollar Tree's comparable sales growth than Dollar General. When it reports tomorrow, they are thinking comps could grow almost 4%. Family Dollar comparable sales, though, those still largely lagging Dollar Tree's comps when you divide the divisions. Truist and Wells Fargo did also up price targets on DLTR yesterday, so before Dollar General's report. Back over to you.
All right, Court, thank you very much. Christina Partsenevelos, HPE ATB. You see what I did there?
Yes, I see what you did there. HPE
Don't put anything
shares.
past me.
No, wow. HPE shares up, but up today. But I have to point out that they are actually trailing the broader market performance with a 17% year-to-date decline, underperforming both the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. The enterprise technology firm is capitalizing on AI infrastructure demand, but there have been a few headwinds. You got ongoing cost challenges, regulatory scrutiny surrounding its $14 billion Juniper Networks acquisition, which should be on track for a 2025 completion. And then adding to that complexity, Scott, activist investor Elliott Management took a substantial $1.5 billion position recently, which really could signal maybe further cost cuts. So the key focused areas for today's earnings, ATB, include margin compression, which we saw last quarter, so maybe any improvements there, AI business momentum, GreenLake cloud service growth trajectory, and management commentary on that cost reduction initiative and any Jupiter integration progress. All of these factors likely to really drive the stock at ATB. Gosh, I'm trying to throw in those acronyms there. Back over to you.
Yeah, Christina,
BRB.
thank you.
BRB.
All right, there you go. Christina Partsenevelos, thank you. Stocks like CrowdStrike come to mind today. Netflix. There are so many different ones that are on these new high runs. What do you make of all that? I mean, Netflix, nothing seems to get in the way of that thing.
No, and leaders continue to lead. So you do have this phase where, the momentum ETF made a new high when the broad market has not. So the stocks that have kind of exhibited have come out of this period as sort of the consensus. They have it figured out. They're usually sector leaders in their business. They're going to work until they don't. I know that sounds ridiculous, but what I do find fascinating is some of the talk, and I was talking about this yesterday. Today, this sell side call from Truist about Alphabet, and how, hey, you know what? Waymo inside of Alphabet. Tesla's being given hundreds of billions of dollars in credit, market cap wise, for their business, which isn't even as close to it. Well, I think you can say something similar with YouTube inside of Alphabet. Netflix, it's a very similar revenue story. Maybe it's not as favorable an earnings split, obviously, for Alphabet as it is for Netflix. My point is, the market doesn't want the sum of the parts. The market wants the pure stuff. And Netflix is the purest, cleanest play on this entire huge shift toward, obviously streaming internet TV. So I think that's indicative of where we are right now. Nobody wants to kind of make the counter trend play. Breadth, I think in general has been okay today, but it's not been indiscriminately, everything going up. Things like industrials and defense stocks that have been winners have kind of caught a bid still or maintained their bid. I think that's the way the market is kind of adapts to when big investors still need to ramp exposure higher. How do they do it? You buy winners, you buy the consensus names, you buy the ones that you don't get fired for owning. So that's the phase we're in right now. I don't agree explicitly with Tom Lee saying that people hate this market. They don't hate this market.
Doesn't feel like they do.
They're afraid to be left behind. They found themselves underexposed to it near the lows and didn't believe the first rally phase and are still apprehensive because of policy risk. So I still do think there's room for big money to get more aggressive in here and to true up their exposures. But it's not as if we're that far from the moment where people feel like, the tank is full and things have to go right from here and not just be less bad for us to continue to the upside.
All right, good stuff. Have a good day. I'll see you tomorrow. That's Mike Santoli. Bell rings us positive and pretty good. Have to say, we'll go out right near the highs of the day.
Listo, cerramos con Nasdaq. Y eso no fue mucho, fue debajo del 1%.
That bell marks the end of regulation. The company is on the Madrona IA40 list, ringing the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Xeris Biopharma doing the honors at the NASDAQ, and stocks ending the day higher after opening to the downside. The Dow closing near the highs of the day, up more than a couple hundred points. Tech the leader, NVIDIA a big winner, taking the crown once again as the world's most valuable company by market cap, edging Microsoft. Retail in the spotlight, Dollar General jumping after raising its full-year outlook. Signet also higher on the back of earnings, with the CEO saying the consumer remains resilient. Oil higher again after coming off its best day in about a month. Energy, one of the top performers. And some names moving higher on the back of analyst upgrades. Pinterest goes to overweight at JP Morgan. Block raised to outperform at Evercore. The target goes to $75. And Broadcom at an all-time high as Citi gets more bullish ahead of earnings this week.
Well, that's the scorecard on Wall Street, but winners stay late. Welcome to Closing Bell Overtime. I'm Morgan Brennan, along with John Fort. Coming up on the show, we are getting some earnings reports in the next few minutes. CrowdStrike, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Asana all reporting. And while NVIDIA and other big chip names have soared over the past month, Qualcomm is up only 6%. Stacey Rasgon will make the case for the stock, which he calls the Rodney Dangerfield of the sector. But first, all major averages are finishing in the green, the Dow ending higher for the fourth straight day. Our next guest says there have been some bullish trends forming in the market during the most recent volatile period, and those trends could mean there's more.
No quiero, pero... Y la ciudad seguramente ahorita debe estar inundada para tener cuidado con las llantas. Pero bueno, mañana será el próximo directo, ya mañana es miércoles. Hay que checar los earnings, el análisis semanal. Solo me quedan 2 informes, por fin. 2 informes de 2 clientes y ya terminé. Y listo. Así que gracias por estar aquí, les agradezco. Y juntos, nos educamos, juntos.